Unpack all of this with Bruce Pannier. He's the Central Asia correspondent for Radio Free Europe, and he joins us live from Prague. So, Bruce, these protests erupted quickly, seemingly coming out of nowhere. And the government was quick to put out concessions, saying, for example, they would lower prices, they would do a number of other things to try to appease these protesters. But the fact that this has intensified shows that the problems run much, much deeper than fuel prices.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely correct with that. You know, this is one of the cases, a case where the genie got let out of the bottle, I think. You know, it did start with, of course, a hike in prices for liquefied petroleum gas used in the majority of cars in Western Kazakhstan. But, you know, there's been a lot of stuff that's been kind of simmering for years now. Social conditions haven't improved a huge amount. Wages haven't improved very much. There's a high inflation in recent years. Especially compounded by the coronavirus pandemic too. So these things all kind of fed into the protests that started as protests against hiking gas prices, and you know, it led to popular unrest across the country very, very quickly. I mean, it surprised everybody how fast it spread from Western Kazakhstan, which is a sparsely populated area, all the way to the major cities of the north and the east.
Right. It makes you wonder where this is going, especially since over these past several days, as the government has tried to get involved and give these protesters something of what they're asking, it is only intensifying.
Yeah, it did seem to build very, very quickly. You know, part of the problem is that the concessions that the government was offering are kind of the same old story, you know, for the last few years. They give people some of what they're demanding when they see that there's large protests, but they never give them all of what they're demanding. You know, and I think this is just generally a reflection of the fact that when, you know, the current president, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, replaced First President Nursultan Nazarbayev in 2019, March 2019, when Nazarbayev stepped down, and there were hopes that this was going to mark a change in the way that Kazakhstan was run. You know, that people would have more participation in the political system, that the living standards would improve, and really that hasn't happened. And it's been almost 3 years, and I think that's really what's fueling most of this protest is, you know, just discontent and dissatisfaction with the lack of progress since March 2019.
Right. I mean, this is an authoritarian system, it's important to emphasize. And as we see these protests, we also see things like the internet shut off.
Yeah, well, that's become a common tactic for, well, probably not just the Kazakh government, but when there are protests that are organized over social networks, the government's response is usually to shut down the internet in the area where the protest is being called, and in advance round up activists or organizers of the protest and bring them into the police station and charge them with some minor offense so that they're not at liberty on the day of the protest.
Yeah,
so this is really nothing new.
Bruce, thanks so much for joining us. This is definitely a disturbing situation that we will keep watching.